For the companies in your portfolio, what are you seeing as kind of the typical things that are the hardest about making this jump from seed to Series A?
I think repeatability is what Series A investors are looking for, but is also really, really hard because I think it's easy to trick yourself into saying you have, and I actually tie repeatability to product market fit, where you like, if you if you have like service market fit or you have like product market fit, but it just requires so much like customization and it's not something that's repeatable, that's not truly like venture scale product market fit. But like if you truly have something repeatable where it's like, hey, here's my like my go to market motion is early but it's repeatable, like the products that I'm delivering are like deployable in like a very similar way, like that's really what Series A investors are looking for and where I want all of our companies to get to. But it's easy to trick yourself into saying you have that when you don't. Um, and it's also easy to have product market fit and assume that you're going to keep that. Like one of the things that's been hardest for companies the last year is you might have had a product market fit in an up market where your tool was looked at as a like very valuable high ROI tool when the market is up. And now suddenly it no longer is like you don't have product market fit in a down market. Like an obvious example of that is like things in marketing tech or a lot of things in HR tech where if you're not hiring, like certain recruiting tools are just no longer going to be like a must-have tool for you. So I think it's really like understanding and reassessing your product market fit is the hardest thing to do, and being super open about it and like tweaking things if you don't have it. But like that's ultimately when I think of, and the last few years have been kind of weird where there have been a lot of Series A's that happened before true product market fit, but it's hard to do.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the repeatable process and having that repeatability, you know, like the sustainability there. And what's really interesting is from a lot of people in open source, they can get some semblance of traction in the open source community, but that doesn't necessarily translate into commercial success.
Yeah.
You can have a really, really wide audience and a lot of people who love your software, but no one who's willing to pay for it. And I've seen that in a lot of cases. And I don't know if that's something that you've run into as you've evaluated companies or you've looked at communities or experienced that. I'm curious your thoughts on that, where, you know, they have something that is really universally loved, but it's really difficult to monetize. It's really difficult to make something that is commercially viable.
Yeah, this goes back to the market point initially, where if like a project could get, or like software in general could get widely adopted, but if it's not in a category where there's going to be budget for it, and budget really comes from something significantly reducing costs or increasing revenue. Like ultimately that is the only time you're going to get enterprise budget for anything. And so if your tool is not doing that enough, it could even be like a must-have tool, but it's just not providing enough ROI for someone to pay enough for it, then there isn't going to be a big enough market. So actually, to give an example of like the company that one of the companies I invested in, Elementary Data, it's in the data observability space, which there is budget for. There are companies like Monte Carlo, Datafold, like this concept of looking for potential errors or issues in your data pipeline. Like there's already clear budget for that. So this is like a new take on a product for that category where it's solving a pain point that companies can pay like a sizable ACV for. For net new categories, you have to be somehow replacing some sort of manual process, but it's all about the like ROI that you're delivering. And I think that's where there's this disconnect between, you could have project market fit where your project is serving a need for the market and for free users, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have product market fit where there's a paid product that people are going to pay for that services a need that is like a huge market opportunity. So it like not all projects should become companies and should become companies. And I think the venture industry has also contributed to this kind of, I think, misnomer around open source traction equals high potential to build a really big company, because it's not always the case.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's that millions of users, you know, conundrum, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got, you know, millions of downloads, millions of users, whatever. Like, you know, oh, this is deployed on every website known to man. But what does that mean in terms of like commercial options? And, you know, more often than not, when I've talked with startups, you know, they might have great traction in the open source space, but they only have a handful of companies that are willing to pay for it. And that means a lot of people rely more on those larger enterprises and less on the kind of like the small, medium-sized businesses, because, you know, in the sports analogy, for those who follow sports, they look for more of that home run as opposed to like the singles or the, you know, the smaller deals. Is that something that you see or hear founders talk about, like, oh, we've got millions of people, we should have millions of customers? And is that something that you have to temper their expectations? Or are they coming in and realizing, yeah, maybe we're going to get a couple hundred paying customers, but we might have millions of users?
Yeah, I think some founders get that, some don't, because I think it's really hard when you see big numbers as far as users or usage. You see like your Slack community growing like crazy, and you're like, how could I not make like millions of dollars off this community? Like, look at how many people there are in here. But it's all like about the quality of that community. And I say quality in the sense of like quality to eventually pay. And this was actually in the survey that I ran, the second most important metric to Series A investors. And I would say, like, we look at this too quite a bit, is like quality of users in your community, because they will have access to budget, presumably, if you're in a category where there is budget or could be budget allocated. And so there's a higher propensity to pay, because if you have like hundreds of thousands even hobbyist users, and like they're using your product because it's free and it's great, but they have no budget, and like if it was paid, like this is the other thing that I talk to founders about when they have really big communities, but they're in a category where I have some questions on whether or not there's like an actual big market size there. It's like, okay, well, like how much would your users be willing to pay for? Because if you look at what a lot of, especially in the open core model, what's being monetized, a lot of times it's like team and enterprise readiness features. It's about scale, it's about collaboration, it's about SSO. It's like things that like a two-person shop they're never going to pay for. So I think it's like really, really understanding the category that you're in and assessing whether or not that category is one that can make a lot of money.